The civil rights history of Lyons Golf Course is that it was the first desegregated golf course south of the Mason-Dixon line. It was the first golf course that allowed African Americans to play on it, a public golf course in the South, and that the opening of the course to African Americans took place in the shadow of the Sweat v. Painter case, which was a Supreme Court case that opened the University of Texas's law school to African Americans, and really sort of started off what most people understand as the nation's move toward civil rights, the nation's move toward opening public spaces, public organizations, institutions of learning, that sort of thing, to African Americans. And so the opening of Muni to African
Start that phrase over again.
the opening of Muni to African Americans was an event that carries a lot of significance for the nation's civil rights history, and for the state's civil rights history, and for the city of Austin. And it represents an instance wherein African Americans, forced open some previously closed doors to leisure spaces, to public spaces where they were able to spend time, enjoying themselves after working, which is something that represents an opportunity for African Americans to participate in, modern America, modern civilization at its fullest. That's one of the things that is important to people, is the fact that there are leisure spaces open for their enjoyment. And the closure of those spaces to African Americans based on ideas of segregation was significant, something that was fought for many years, all the way back to Plessy Ferguson. And so the fact that on this golf course, Muni, in the city of Austin, some young kids who were caddies at the time decided to go on the golf course and play in opposition to segregation is extremely significant. And it's something that would be echoed later on repeatedly, as African Americans fought to get onto other public spaces in the South.
That's awesome.
That's great. That's very wonderful.
How does it relate to how does that play into University of Texas trying to develop a golf course?
The University of Texas has a fairly long history with being on what I would consider to be both sides of the battle over equal access, diversity, desegregation, these types of things. Obviously, I already mentioned the Sweat v. Painter case, which was brought essentially against the university, and the fact that they wanted to operate a separate, and as it turned out, it was found to be unequal, law school. At the same time, the university in recent years has been at the forefront of the battle to maintain diversity on campuses, while at the same time maintaining fairly high academic standards. So when the university finds itself faced with the possibility of having to, well, they don't have to. When the university finds itself faced with the choice of furthering, the portion of the educational project that comes with teaching about diversity, teaching about equal access, teaching about the history of segregation in this country, in the state, in the city, even at the university itself, it faces off against the need to raise revenue and these type of things to run a large institution in this day and age. I think what you end up coming face to face with is you have to do a sort of accounting. And to me, the accounting looks something like this. You can either find in the project of education a value that isn't as easily accounted for as, say, how much money you can get for renting space, for commercial development, and that sort of thing. But a value that exists in education, a value that exists in forwarding diversity and forwarding the history of equality and the ongoing battle for equality, there's an accounting there as well that it's extremely valuable. And so the university is sort of faced with, do they want to invest in the value of education, which on some levels sounds pretty simple. It's a university, you would think, yes, they want to invest in the value of education. You would think that they would want to invest in the value of forwarding the history and the ongoing struggle for equality, for equal access, for diversity, these type of things, as opposed to simply saying we're going to carve up some land and make commercial use of it for revenue. It's understood that revenue is necessary for a university, but I think that there is a sort of cultural, political, and educational revenue that has to be taken into account when you think about a space like Muni. The history of the civil rights activities that took place here is connected with the space. It's connected with the golf course. It's an 18-hole golf course. And it's not something that can be properly represented, in my opinion, or properly understood by simply placing a plaque amidst other commercial ventures, et cetera. I think that the importance of Muni as a public space the importance of Muni as a public space and as a space that has a historical connection to significant and early civil rights activities continues into the present. Austin continues to have issues of troubling racial geographies. It continues to have issues of access, equal access for African Americans, brown, Hispanics. And so the preservation of the course presents an opportunity to not only present as an educational program the course, its history, to teach people about the civil rights movement, to teach people about Austin's place in the civil rights movement, but it presents an opportunity for the university to reach out and to help create opportunities in the Austin community in the present, and in that way to communicate to the nation as a whole that there are these types of educational, cultural, political revenues that should be exploited, as opposed to simply trying to create commercial opportunities. I think that the University of Texas at Austin should save Muni. I think they should save it as an 18-hole golf course. It presents an opportunity to preserve a civil rights moment that is important to the history of the nation, and it provides an opportunity to move the project of equal access and equal opportunity into the future. Do the right thing and save Muni.